Hi readers, Chris here. This past week has been absolutely crazy. Not one, not two, but 3 different graduation parties going on. But I could not waste this opportunity for this 4th of July weekend here in the US to finally talk about Anthem by Noah Hawley. Buckle up because this is going to be a rant. And unfortunately, trigger warning, I cannot talk about this book without talking about politics a little bit. I know. Full disclosure up front, I do not like politics. I don't like talking about politics. I don't like reading about politics because it's usually very negative. And in the context of this book, it is also very negative. So, I'm not going to do my normal world building characters and plot. I'm just going to spew out whatever comes to my mind, and hopefully by the end it makes sense. So the premise of this book is that it takes place in modern day post-pandemic America. So literally America 2021. But in this America, teenagers have started killing themselves, seemingly at random. So instead of people coming down with a virus, all of a sudden, parents go to sleep one day and then the next morning they get up and their teenagers are dead for all different reasons. So the book, the plot of the book focuses on a young boy named Simon. Simon's sister, who was a little bit older than him, Claire, she is one of these teenagers that killed herself. And because Simon is having a hard time dealing with this, he has a lot of anxiety. Simon comes from a privileged family, so he is a young white privileged boy. His family sends him to what they call an anxiety abatement center. While he is there, he meets a couple other characters in our book. One is this boy who we only get to know as the Prophet. He's very mysterious. We don't really learn much about him. We don't really learn much about him throughout the course of the story, where he comes from, but he seems to have a lot of information and know a lot of stuff about what's going on. And then Simon also meets this young African-American girl. Her name is Louise. Now, Louise, she comes from a very, lower class family, but she was able to get into this, ritzy anxiety center from her connections. Let's just say that Louise is someone who, and I hate to make this comparison, but I don't know how else to explain it. But if you are familiar with the Harvey Weinsteins and the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, Louise is someone who willingly went to an older, wealthy person so that she could provide sexual favors for them and get money from it. Now, they kind of make it seem in the beginning like she wanted to do this, but then, throughout the course of the story, it's one of those she really had no choice because she was not in a position of power, etc., etc. So Simon, Louise, and this Prophet, they kind of become friends at this center. They end up breaking out because they realize that this place is actual, bullcrap. They don't belong there, or it's not really, going to help them deal with their real world issues and what's going on. And once they break out, they meet up with this other guy, and his sister is with the same man that Louise has previously had relationships for. So in the story, they refer to this wealthy white man as the wizard. So he's not really a wizard in fantasy magical terms, but he's a wizard in the sense that he is so wealthy and so privileged that the regular laws of the world don't apply to him. The laws of the world don't apply to him. So in that sense, he kind of is magic. You think of a Mark Zuckerberg or a Jeffrey Bezos. Those are basically the wizards, but except in this book, there is an actual wizard. He has so much money, he has multiple houses. Anywhere he goes in the world, people just roll out the red carpet for him, and there are 0 consequences to anything that he does. So again, there is no real magic in this book, but it has this kind of fantastical setting to it, if that makes sense. So at this point, you're probably thinking, where the hell does politics come into this? I'm so glad you asked. Honestly, I don't know why there are politics in this book, but there are. Throughout the story, from the page 1 till the end, Noah Hawley talks a lot about how there's 2 different types of people in the world. 2 different types. And that everyone is one or the other. He doesn't come out and say it by like actual terms. He refers to people as like, oh, well, there's the cooks in the kitchen, and then there's the people that order, or the people that ride the waves, or the people that are underneath. But what he's really talking about are Democrats and Republicans. He does not use those words, but that's absolutely 100% what he is talking about. And in this book, he claims that he is not taking sides. He claims that, oh, no matter which side you're on, I'm not taking sides. He claims that in the beginning, and he does claim that more than once throughout the book. But anyone reading this book can tell that he absolutely does take sides. He absolutely does. And I have no problem with that. If you want to take a side, that's fine, but don't pretend that you're not taking a side and then actually do take a side. That's the stuff that kind of really annoys me. So in the beginning of this book, he talks a lot about, oh, there's all this stuff going on. He talks about so many different issues that are affecting America today. He talks about violence. He talks about gun violence. He talks about, the pandemic and how that really had effect on like the psyche of younger people and how they can't deal with stuff because they haven't had a lot of time out in the world that was taken away from him. He says all this stuff in this book. But every single thing that he talks about and every single issue that he mentions, and it's not saying that any of this stuff isn't true, but it is all negative. It is all negative. All negative. And I get it. Nothing is perfect right now. There's a lot of issues that face our world today. There is a ton. It would take way longer in this video to go down all of them and talk about them all in a cohesive and intelligent way. There's a lot of issues. But I personally like to believe that even with all those issues, that at the end of the day, that there is still hope and that people generally are good. That is not what this book does. This book is 100% all doom and gloom. It is all doom and gloom. And I'm sorry, but like, if you're not going to offer a solution or you're not going to put something positive out in the world, then you're part of the problem. Yes, I said that. Strong words, I know. But by the time I was halfway through this book, I was like, oh man, he's just spitting out statistics about how horrible everything is. And again, yes, it is. But he never says anything like uplifting. He doesn't do anything to like lift you up. It's all putting you down, basically. So I've given you a little bit of the setup of the book and some of the issues that I've had with it. But I want to go back and talk about like the actual plot of the book. In the beginning of this book, like the first half, I was actually interested. I knew going in, I'm familiar with Noah Hawley's work as like a TV writer. So I've seen him do Fargo on FX here in the US, the Legion show. So I know that he's known for being like trippy and stuff, and all that stuff is totally fine. So the first half of this book, I decided, just let it go, get into it, see where it takes you. So even though I was like a little bit annoyed by some of his pretentiousness, I was like, whatever. I was interested in the characters, Simon, Louise, and the Prophet. There's a couple of others, but those are kind of like the main ones. And so the story's going along, and he actually does have some funny things to say about like trolls. So we all are familiar with internet trolls. There are some trolls in this story, but they are actual people. So that's kind of funny, and I like that stuff. But then about halfway through this book, the plot stops. And then this is what he says, and I'm just going to read this so you understand. So this is 217 pages into this book. New chapter, untitled. First of all, your author would like to apologize for the world he has created. He knows it is ridiculous. The fact that the world that he lives in is also ridiculous is no excuse. The author's job is to make sense of the senseless. to create cohesion from incohesion. But if the author's job is also to reflect reality as he perceives it onto the page, then what is he meant to do when the world he lives in loses all sense? Consider this, as he writes, 34% of his neighbors have gone to war against tiny pieces of fabric that are robbing them of their personal freedom. And so they have declared war against these pieces of fabric, even as scientists present evidence that those same tiny pieces of fabric will protect them from a deadly virus sweeping the globe, killing millions. But for the 34%, the fabric, not the virus, is the enemy. And so they lie dying in hospitals from a disease that they argue does not exist. It goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. And this is what I mean about, he doesn't say it in black and white, but he clearly is taking sides here, clearly. And again, don't have problems if you want to take sides, but don't pretend that you're not, and then do it anyway. So he goes on for just a couple pages here, but I take issue with the fact that Noah Hawley apparently felt that because myself and other readers clearly aren't intelligent enough to understand the metaphors and hyperbole he's doing here, so he needed to take the time in the middle of his book to explain what his book is about. Yeah, just let that sink in for a minute. This author stopped the plot, stopped the flow of this story to explain what this book is about. Pretty much after that part, I could not get back into it. Honestly, I should have DNF'd at that point. I should have DNF'd. But because I have a problem with not DNFing, I just kept going. But anything after that really annoyed me. Just so annoyed me. I don't like being spoken down to. Not in real life, and certainly not via a book that I purchased with my own money. Granted, I did get this one half off at a used bookstore. But still, I think you're getting my point. I have never read a book before that the author has stopped to explain it in the middle of it, which is just mind-blowing to me. It's just mind-blowing. And then I do have to go back and address, I feel like I need to say this. Maybe I probably shouldn't open my mouth, but I'm going to say it anyway. I also take issue with the fact that you cannot just take all people and put them into boxes. You can't just say, oh, you're this or you're that, and that's it. You're either one or the other. I take issue with that. That is not true in anything. That's the definition of stereotyping. So don't like that. Trying not to get myself too worked up here, but the long and short of it is, this book actually did start out interesting. I thought it had potential. I thought it was going to be weird and wild, and I expected it to be a little pretentious, but I did not expect the levels of pretension that it would reach. So if you are someone that is into politics, maybe you might enjoy this story because it probably has it does have a lot of information and statements in it, and you might find that enjoyable. Or this book might actually enrage you, because if you're not on the right side, this book is not for you. It will enrage you. And like most things, I'm in the middle. I'm mildly annoyed. Well, maybe more than mildly annoyed, but I'm mildly annoyed because I don't like, not thinking that I'm not smart enough to understand what the book is about. I don't like some of the general stereotypes that this book promotes, and I just don't like the negativity. So those three things make this definitely not my favorite book. I believe this was at the bottom of my reads for May. That's when I read it. I know it's been a while now, but that is why this book ended up in the bottom, for all of those reasons listed above. If anyone out there has actually read this one, I would love to know what you think, and if it affected you on like such a visceral level as it affected me. even when I'm ranting, as Mason would say, I still try to be positive about it. I still try to be nice about it. But yeah, this book sucks. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more book reviews coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading.